we're going to head to Greece because nearly 80 migrants have died after the fishing boat they were travelling in capsized in the early hours of Wednesday morning. And since then, the Greek coastguard have been having to answer lots of questions like, did they intercept the boat and attach a rope? And maybe that is why it sank. And it's just a massive and tragic reminder that there is still a flow of migrants from North Africa across the Mediterranean to Greece and Italy. Let's talk about it now. Making her return this week to Newscast is BBC Europe correspondent Sophia Bettisa. Hello, Sophia.
Hi, Adam.
And also joining us again after, I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks, Lise. Welcome back, Lise.
It's always good to be on your programme, Adam. And hello to Sophia too. And good wishes to Sophia covering this terrible, terrible tragedy.
Yeah, so Sophia, just do the geography for us. Like, where are you in relation to where this boat sank?
I'm in Kalamata, which is in southern Greece, and it's not far from where this boat capsized on Wednesday night. Now, there's a big search operation that is still going on today because there is a fear that many people are still missing at sea. The European Union has sent manpower to Greece to help, but it's a very difficult operation, and that's because of the location of the accident. It's very close to the deepest part of the Mediterranean Sea, with depths of up to 5,200 meters. And of course, some of the families of the people who were on that boat have arrived in Kalamata today, hoping to find their loved ones and be reunited with them. But, realistically, the boat sank on Wednesday. It is now Friday afternoon here in Greece. So hopes of finding anybody alive are fading.
And there are some quite powerful videos of people being reunited with survivors that you can see on the BBC News website. And Sophia, why are the Greek Coast Guard having to answer these questions about whether there was some kind of rope involved from a Greek Coast Guard boat?
That's quite complicated. Let me try and simplify. There are conflicting reports about what happened on Wednesday. We had two accounts from survivors that suggest that the boat capsized because a rope was attached to it by coastguards. One of them, for example, said that the coastguard boat tied them with a rope and tried to tow them to the left, but for some reason the boat veered to the right and suddenly sank, and that it took about 15 minutes for the boat to go down, so that was very, very quick. But Greek officials have been denying this. They are saying that a rope was used when the Coast Guard approached the boat, but that there was no attempt to tow the boat or tether it. So we have not been able to verify those accounts. What we do know is that 9 people have been arrested. All of them are from Egypt, and they will appear before a judge on Monday. And so the hope is that that will sort of help us piece together what exactly happened on Wednesday.
And I suppose the reason those questions about the rope are so pertinent is because ever since the migrant crisis first started in the Mediterranean in the mid-2010s, the Greek government was facing accusations of either holding people in very bad conditions in the refugee camps or doing these things called pushbacks, the idea that actually you could stop the boat getting into your territorial waters so it didn't become your problem and you didn't have to process the people that might have to be rescued.
That's absolutely right. And in fact, for the past few years, Greece had quite a conservative government, and they have hardened their stance on migration. And as a consequence, migrants who leave from Libya and try to get to Europe tend to want to sort of not stop in Greece, but continue to Italy. Now, on top of that, there's also been some criticism towards the European Union and its migration policy. Just a couple of days ago, the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said that after the shipwreck, she would get tougher and sort of crack down on people smugglers. But what critics are saying is that it's precisely this crackdown that is forcing people to take longer routes and more dangerous routes to get to Europe.
And Lise, you've been covering this story for, nearly a decade now. What are the kind of like the big arrows on the map that we need to consider when we're thinking about events like this?
Adam, the map is a mess. The system is broken because every time an arrow, as you call it, or a route seems to become more difficult, more dangerous, then the smuggling networks and the rock-hard determination of the migrants, people on the run, fleeing persecution, disasters and war, they find another way to get to their destination, which is anywhere but a home, which they feel has become, in effect, a prison.
And you've also charted the changing attitudes in the countries where these people are arriving, where they're trying to get to.
Some people listening will remember the high point of people, the numbers of people fleeing their countries towards Europe. In 2015, more than 1 million people, mainly fleeing Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Eritrea, headed towards Europe, anywhere in Europe. And people will remember perhaps Angela Merkel, the German chancellor at the time, saying, we can do this, we can do it. And Germany took in the vast share of migration. There was a whole upsurge in empathy, of the willingness to open doors, but all of the doors, the gates, then quickly slammed shut. And what you are hearing now, yet again, yet another tragedy. This is the worst tragedy on record on the Greek coast. But there will certainly be others, some less, the numbers less, some certainly the numbers will be more. And every time it happens, there is a chorus of people saying, the system is broken, you need to have legal migration routes for people to come safely.
And one of those people who is calling for change is Julia Black from the International Organization for Migration, who was talking about the huge numbers of people crossing from Africa to Europe, which Lise was just referring to.
We have hundreds of records of bodies that are washed up to Mediterranean shores where we don't know of any known shipwreck. The problem continues, it seems to be worsening, and there's no responses in place to actually prevent these deaths that I have seen. The Mediterranean at this point is really a mass graveyard.
Sophia, it's interesting. I was just thinking back to the first time we ever started working together, and it was in the BBC Brussels Bureau in about 2015 when the migrant crisis was really getting underway, and you saw those pictures of columns of thousands of people crossing borders in Europe to try and get to Germany, listening to Angela Merkel's call to come and settle in Germany. And I just remember it was amazing seeing the EU just having to scrabble for a response, just make something up. And it took them years to kind of get all the pieces in place for them to feel that they were handling this situation. And now there's a sort of feeling that, yep, that problem's been solved, everything's in place now, but yet you still get accidents like the one you've been reporting on in the last few days.
You're right. At the time when we were working together, it felt that migration was one of the biggest issues that the European Union had to deal with. The migration crisis was huge in 2015. And then it sort of went away, but it never really went away in terms of the boats kept coming. And of course, we all know that with the good weather, with summer, more boats will try to make those journeys. And it's also an issue that never stopped being politicized, as Liz just said. And here in Greece, too, we saw last night protests in Athens, in Thessaloniki, and in other parts of the country. Protests against the way that the government has been handling this whole situation. Just a reminder that Greece has a general election in 10 days' time, and what happened on Wednesday is being politicized already by all sides of the political spectrum.
You know what, Sophia, let's zoom back in on the incident that you've been reporting. And there was a clip on the Today programme with a Red Cross volunteer doctor called Dr. Georgios Vassilagos, and he was talking about what the conditions were like on the boat that we're talking about. So let's have a little listen to him.
The refugees were drinking seawater, as they told us, for at least 2 days before the shipwreck. As far as we know and what they told us, the conditions aboard the ship were pretty bad. It was packed below deck and, of course, on deck. This is why we have so many casualties. Sadly, no women or children are among the survivors.
I think there's a tendency now for boats that are bigger to leave Libya and try and get to Europe. We used to see a few years ago very small dinghies, but that trend has changed and we're seeing more and more sort of bigger boats. And something else that is interesting, you mentioned that the boat was big and it was overcrowded. There's been a lot of controversy here in Greece about what exactly happened on Wednesday and why the boat capsized. We talked about the issues around the rope, but something else that people are talking about here in the papers and on national TV is why the Greek Coast Guard took so long to intervene. Now, the Greek Coast Guard is saying that they made contact with the boat on Tuesday, which is the day before the boat went down. They offered to help, but the people on board reportedly refused any help. They just wanted to keep sailing towards Italy. But some human rights groups are telling a different story. They're saying that the Coast Guard was aware of what was going on for several hours before they decided to do something about it. In fact, an NGO is saying that they received messages from people on board saying that they were scared that they would not survive the night and that they needed help. And also, what people are saying is that even though the people on board did not ask for help, clearly there was something wrong with this boat. We've all seen the pictures. It was overcrowded, it had no flag, and the crew had no paperwork. So the Coast Guard should have tried to help because it was the moral thing to do. So what a lot of human rights groups are saying is that if they had intervened earlier, this tragedy could have been avoided.
And Lise, I'm not sure how across you are the political situation in Libya, because lots of observers of this whole situation say actually the stability or instability in Libya is kind of the key piece of the puzzle here.
Instability and hardship and persecution in Libya, also in Syria, also in Afghanistan, in Sudan. The list is long. But yes, Libya is the place that many of the migrants from sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa come to. They get stranded there. They try to find routes out. We've seen the tragic stories of the detention centers, the conditions are absolutely horrific. Even those who are the strongest supporters of refugees are saying that we need to find a way to make this work. The EU has now passed, at least still has to go through the parliament, but trying to find ways to make this system work. But it's a huge, huge challenge. Some would say one of the biggest challenges of our time, and that's saying a lot.
A perfect place to end it. Lise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. Always good to be on your program and nice to be on it with, well, not nice because it's sad stories, but good to be on it with Sophia today.
And thanks to you too, Sophia. Good luck.
Thanks, Lise. Thanks, Adam.